Spoiler warning for the entirety of Xenoblade Chronicles X, as with the first part. Hello everyone, I'm Luxin, and I finally remembered I had this series. If you're like the third of my subscriber base that subbed after I made the last video, you don't even know what I'm talking about. This is part 2 of a What If series where I explore what might have happened to the story of Xenoblade Chronicles X had the White Whale not had to make a crash landing on Mira. Basically, what if it wasn't as damaged in the fight above it and had landed successfully? I'm not going to recap the last episode besides retconning a couple things, so if you haven't seen it and want to know what's going on in this one, then please go just watch that video first. This is already going to be a long episode, probably even longer than the last one, and I don't want to make it any longer than I did just by writing it this way. The main thing that I'm going to change here is a couple motivation things for the Ganglion. I said in the last episode, erroneously, that it was the Ganglion that shot the White Whale down in the first place. It wasn't, it was the ghosts. So, yeah, the ghosts shot down the White Whale. And the reason the Ganglion didn't have as much of a foothold in Primordia when the party fought them was instead just because they didn't have as much time to set up. They were there for only 2 weeks before the humans found them, as opposed to 2 months as in the base game. The other thing is, I mistakenly said that there were 10 million humans stored in the Lifehold computer. I was wrong, it's actually 20 million, so, you know, they gotta work even harder on building up NLA to store that many people, if there's twice as many as I thought there were. So, we now will pick up with the party after Chapter 3, after making peace with the Napon, and unfortunately running into the Ganglion and getting into conflict with them. For a couple weeks, things just kinda go as normal. The Napon are shown around the city, Coco promises to, start a trade route, and that kinda usual stuff. And Cross just goes on missions with their new partner Tora, as well as all of Team Elma, and this is sort of the equivalent to the point in the base game where your party options open up and you can recruit a few of the other characters that you've seen throughout the story. That's when you can get access to Arena, Gwyn, and Doug to join your party, stuff like that. So Cross would probably go on missions with Elma, Danny, Boris, Gwyn, Arena, Doug, Hope, and Lau, since they were introduced to Lau a bit earlier. Lynn's still sitting out, of course, and possibly meeting up and going on missions with a few optional characters that you can usually get at the beginning of the game, like HB, Fog, and Lexa. Also, since this isn't gameplay-based What If, a few characters, namely Elma, Danny, Boris, Gwyn, Arena, Doug, and Lau, have access to Skells. The rest don't. Elma uses a normal Skell, the one she beat the Stanicula with, and not her Ares, the weird tandem one that she uses in the opening cutscene. Not because it's damaged in this case, because, well, the ship didn't crash, so it didn't get damaged in the impact or flung off or whatever happened to where she had to restart it with the Prog Ares in the main game. But she just doesn't have a second pilot. The Prog isn't completed. She just doesn't want to use it, so she uses a normal Skell of some sort. Lau will be the one to demonstrate to Cross how to use the overdrive gear of their Mimiosome. Now, this might be some sort of base to a bit of a character development for him, because I'm imagining it happening as some sort of fight against a large tyrant or something, and Lau's like, yeah, here, I'll just blow myself up and take this thing out. Then he's like, wait a minute, if this doesn't kill the thing, Cross is still there, and will probably also be in danger. It's a matter of principle, even though, yeah, it's just another Mim. I'd rather 0 Mims get destroyed than 2 if I screw up. So he turns it into a bit of a learning experience, shows Cross how to use the overdrive gear. When I talk about Lau detonating his Mim as an attack, I sort of envision it as it being some sort of adaptation of the overdrive gear, somehow overloading it and causing it to blow up the Mim instead of enhancing it of some sort. So Cross is able to use overdrive. Basically all the characters are more open in using it. The only reason story-wise they locked it off from you is because you didn't know you were a Mimiosome. Obviously gameplay-wise they didn't want to throw as many mechanics at you, so again, since there's no gameplay here, you don't have to worry about that. They get overdrive basically as soon as they become well integrated into Blade. In terms of exploration and frontier nav development, a lot of Primordia has been explored and mapped. Again, since there's a lot less ganglion to get in the way, Blades can do some expeditions a lot more unimpeded. I'd imagine that they've gotten pretty far out, like to the entrances of Noctil and Oblivia, the beginning areas of those continents. Not just say, there's a continent there, we're not going to go in there, but they get a little bit, like 2 or 3 frontier nav segments into both of those continents. I'd imagine they've found North Point Beach, that they know there's that little archipelago in between there and Silvalum, but they want to focus on the areas closer to NLA first. They haven't gone into Silvalum yet. A couple of ganglion troops are noticed in Oblivia, and there are some stragglers in Primordia, but they haven't delved far enough into Noctilum to sort of get to where the ganglion are there, and the Oblivia ones seemed like they were already fleeing from someone other than the Blades, so that's probably going to be important later. The Primordia ones are just stragglers from the Windswept base that didn't get destroyed when the base was taken over, which they were able to do since it was less fortified and there were less powerful enemies there. So now, we get into the What Ifs equivalent of Chapter 4, which instead of being sorta the first expedition into Noctilum, it's instead escorting the Dodonga caravan Napon, who decided to not remain in the city, back to the caravan and then exploring a bit deeper into Noctilum. So when they drop off people like Coco and Tatsu back at the caravan, Coco offhand mentions someone whose description matches what L says of himself in the main game, and mentions that he kind of set up in a spring type area, which we'll say is the arena where Goetia is fought in the main story, like where that Lifehold piece landed. So he's around that same area, and if there was something that landed there, he would have found it and learned English from it, but obviously that didn't happen in this case. So they do meet him there. They have a pretty similar conversation. He speaks in normal English, unfortunately. The only reason that he has his weird dialect isn't, in fact, because of anything like the Napon having a language that doesn't translate well. It's because, unlike everyone else whose native alien language is auto-translated, he's actively learning and speaking English because the Lifehold piece that landed near him was the Library of Congress archives, so he actually had access to a lot of media and was able to sort of teach him the language, but poorly. So he doesn't have his weird butchered phrases, but his eccentricism is still intact, so he's not as interesting as original L, but he's still there. He's gonna basically serve the same purpose. He will join Blade, so you don't have to worry about him not being there. He's just probably not as cool as he used to be. They discuss events since the arrival of the White Whale, and while there wasn't a Lifehold piece landing near him, it does turn out that he saw the Skell fall in the Tainted area and has had to flee from a few ganglion troops that had set up in Noctilum. They bring L back to the city. He does decide, I'm sorry, this is a really long video, so I'm not gonna cut out as many mistakes here, as you've probably already seen. Probably gonna be funnier to you to listen to. He does decide to join Blade, but not in the same way as just kind of general freelancer guy who does things, sort of. He'll join them as he's a combatant, so he will fight, but he's sort of a supplies and provisions manager who specializes in Mirren items. A lot of the stuff Blade uses is stuff they brought with them from Earth or adapted from parts of the White Whale, which, again, was a lot easier to do this time because they had the entire ship there, as opposed to having to find stuff. If anything, the Reclaimers might not actually exist. That's like the one Blade division that probably doesn't exist in this What If. It might be something else, like finding stuff that fell after the battle, or that kind of thing. Or, like, explicitly trying to reclaim areas of the wilderness that the Ganglion tainted or something. If the Reclaimers exist, they're going to be in a bit of a different state than they were in the original game. But that's not too important since Elma never really does too much division work anyway. And obviously they issue him his own Mimeosome so he doesn't have to die. And I'd imagine there'd be somewhat of a comedic scene because the people who design Mims would have to try to figure out how to make his head type. His body is the same as a human, but taller, so they could probably just easily squash and stretch something they already had. But they'd have to make things a little interesting in order to make an accurate recreation of his head, and I could see there being some sort of comedic scene about that. And a team is sent to retrieve the Skell from the Tainted Lands right away. There's no issue with Tatsu doing anything, so they're able to get in and get out pretty easily. This doesn't even have to be Team Elma doing it. We could give another party member's team some time to shine, like maybe Doug's team or Team Arena doing something really big. And yeah, they got the Vita early. They don't know what it is, and they're going to be as confused until they find out what it actually is. They only know that it's not of Earthmake, and it probably was something ganglion related. And since L was in the vicinity of where it fell, he obviously doesn't go into the tainted area because he doesn't like dying, but he saw that it fell and he had to run from ganglion in the area, so they do sort of piece together that the ganglion are probably trying to go for it, and it would be a good idea to not inform them that they have it, so they continue trying to waste resources on something that they don't know is there anymore. So they got that all sorted out, and surprisingly, that went off pretty well. I didn't even think of a way where, yeah, there'd be a boss fight in that chapter. They might have to fight some Tainted or something, like, just something like that, or just some random indigen that attacks them in L, or maybe a ganglion Skell or something, but it's not a big deal. That operation went off a lot better because Tatsu wasn't there. You see a pattern here? So then Noctilum is explored up to the foot of the Celestial Ascent, because obviously flying Skells aren't there. So the entire thing has been explored up to the part where they need to fly to get to. It's amid ganglion conflicts, but they do make it there. They do sort of know the lay of the land for Noctilum, at least. Sylvalum is reached and is explored a little bit. Like, the entire Seabird's Beak is explored, but they don't extend too far into the plains area because they see Zdoms and they're like, yeah, we don't have to... They're not on a time crunch to explore the entire planet this time, so they can afford to be a lot more cautious, and they see Zdoms, they're like, yeah, maybe let's not go that way this time. Oblivia isn't touched much, but soon, a little bit after the successful Noctilum mission, Team Elma decides to go on an Oblivia exploration mission. Tora leads the group to the Drongo Caravan, because he knows where that is. He's a good savvy Nopon merchant. And everyone present is surprised to see 3 alien races there besides the Nopon. Because the Ganglion were in such disarray and were surprised to get attacked and defeated by the humans so early, the Rothians noticed weakness in their ranks, and Gajarg decided to depart them from the main body of the Ganglion and, like, become their own separate entity a lot sooner and without conflict with the humans first. So the Rothians already fled to Oblivia and already established the Rothian stronghold. That's where they're one of the 3 races there is a Rothian. There's also Manon there. They ran into the Manon ship before the humans could get there, and they allied with them. And most scarily, with them is also a few prone. The Rothian warrior instantly attacks the party, believing them to be Ganglion, and Team Elma instantly retaliates with force, not just to defend themselves, because they see the prone there. The Bleeds do pull out a victory, and are obviously going to show mercy to the others, which first off surprises the Rothian because Ganglion don't seem to know honor particularly well, and it turns out that in their campaigning against the Ganglion in Oblivia, they're trying to rout them from their new homeland. Obviously, they first rescued the Manon and gave them protection because the Manon can't fight at all, but they also went into that one stronghold and rescued the Tree Clan of the Prone, and they allied themselves, and they basically created a brand new sovereign nation ruled by Gajarg, focusing on basically protecting all the races of Mira from the Ganglion. So eventually things work out, they establish peace, apologize for attacking each other and all that stuff, and the party is brought to the Rothian stronghold. They meet Gajarg and Gabui, they act basically the way they do normally, except they've never seen the humans before so they don't trust them, and Gajarg really doesn't trust them. After a duel with the party, so that whole Chapter 10 fight is a lot sooner here, and presumably if this was gameplay-wise, they wouldn't be as high a level, it would be easier and stuff. And it might just be Jarg fighting all 4 of them alone. So he claims he can sense that they mean no harm to any enemies of the Ganglion, but he still doesn't want to ally himself with them because he's not impressed with the fact that humans hide behind their puppets when they fight. Eventually, since obviously the humans want to make an ally with 3 entire races, especially 2 that are as powerful as good fighters as the Rothian and Prone, and 1 that has as good tech as the Manon, it eventually takes Shosan visiting the Rothian stronghold in person in his natural body and not a meme of himself to finally convince Gajarg that, yeah, humans are okay. And, like, he shakes hands with the Prone leaders, which is especially important because Prone were basically what they thought most of the Ganglion was at this point. So, eventually, they agree, and NLA and the Oblivia guys enter into a very different sort of alliance than NLA and the Rothians had in the base game. The Manon ship does still go to the city because NLA has a lot better tech and resources that they can use to build stuff than the Rothian stronghold does. A few Rothian and Prone, under the command of Gabuid, do decide to join Blade, and a few civilian-ish ones do choose to just move to the city because they want to live there. And yeah, Prone, I'd say they do choose to fight in MIMS because they're still worried for the survival of their race, possibly wanting to rescue other Prone that were also captured, and not wanting to actually die at the hands of the other clan of Prone that still fights for the Ganglion. So I'd say they use MIMS, but the Rothians are definitely way too prideful to actually make them of themselves, so they still fight in their normal bodies. Oblivia Alliance gains access to a lot of benefits from Blade and stuff. I'd say that Blade gives them access to Oblivia's frontier nav. They tend to not want to extend much further than Oblivia because they don't know about any other races being subjugated to the Ganglion, as far as they can tell. Like, they know that the Marnoks and the Milsati and all those guys exist too, but they're pretty sure that most of them are just, like, fighting for them and aren't being enslaved into doing it as much as other Prone are and that kind of thing. So they're more content to just protect the 3 races that they've already allied with and have there, as well as the native Napon, as opposed to, like, campaigning out further into Mira. But if they see the Ganglion establishing a stronghold in somewhere that they or the humans know of, they're definitely gonna, like, go for it. Both parties do agree to, like, help each other if they run into Ganglion trouble and that kind of thing. And there's also the usual general sharing of tech and resources. Blade would gain access to gear developed by Candid Incredible and 6 Stars at the same time. Now, there's no actual Prone arms manufacturer, so perhaps Meredith Company gets founded here instead of a little earlier in the story, and is instead by some sort of human-Prone collaboration as opposed to, like, just using captured Ganglion tech, because that seems kind of cool. I like the idea of scientific collaboration over scientific theft, even though both tend to happen in the real world, but this isn't the real world, this is a whole different planet, so I'm willing to fudge the truth here a little bit. In the interim time there, Sylvalum is explored a little bit more. Bleed becomes a close enough ally to Cross and Friends where she would be playable if this was a playable game, like she'd be another optional party member. Rothian design skills do exist and they are brought into NLA, because the Rothian blades obviously would prefer them to the Earthmaid ones. And they can fly. So Blade has access to flying skills right now. A lot earlier in the story than they normally would. But their flight module isn't compatible with Earth skills or MIMS. So Blade actually chooses to not train members using them to fly. They instead focus on still training new Skell pilots in the existing Earthmaid skills, and possibly refitting Rothian weapons and frames with the Earthscale infrastructure so humans can, like, actually pilot Rothian-based skills, but they can't fly. They'd rather put resources into developing a flight module for the Earthscales as opposed to training humans to operate the Rothian ones. Now, along this time, Cross actually completes their skill license training, and since they're not as big a hero at this point, I kind of imagine it that way, since we've sort of had a few Blade teams share in some of the glory and stuff, and while there are probably actually more skills to go around, they get their license but don't have time to, like, go through the logistics of actually getting their first skill. when them and the rest of Team Elma, and a lot of the important characters, are called off to take part in Chapter 6, an assault at the foot of the Divine Roost. Some captured Ganglion from Noctilum have mentioned something about a Guardian and trying to get past tainted enemies, again, presumably to get the Vita. Obviously, the characters don't know it's called the Vita. They don't mention the Vita, they probably just say something about it being a great skell or something. But they put 2 and 2 together, because Blades are pretty smart. They know what's going on. Elle and Tora both know about this, and they get very concerned about how they know about the Guardian of Mira, and what would happen if they did somehow get control over it. Neither of them particularly think the Guardian would actually bow itself to the Ganglion, but it's still a chance, and it's a chance they don't want to take. Rothian scout skells have noted that a Ganglion base in North Noctilum has been heavily fortified with a lot of space for skell storage, and that a Zern, pretty sure it's actually the southernmost one in the game, if this one exists, has moved into position above it, and some skells have definitely departed and flown off towards the roost. So a joint NLA, Rothian, Oblivion, whatever you want to call it, operation is put together. Use non-combatant transports and Rothian skells to send a huge force of Blades, Rothians, Prone, everywhere to basically destroy the base as quickly as possible, and to save the Guardian if necessary. The ground troops get there, easily overwhelm the base. It's kind of a bloodbath. Like, the humans and Rothians combined, and Prone, they definitely outnumber the Ganglion at the base, that are at least on the ground and stuff, so that happens. But all the flyers, most of the skells in the Zern, they get away, flying north straight to the Divine Roost. And unfortunately, again, Blade has a lot less aerial capability than the Ganglion, so they can't send everyone up there, at least safely. If they try to send some of their more not heavily fortified, not gun stuff, like transport helicopters and ships to even bring people on the ground up, they're still going to get shot down, and you don't want to waste resources, even if they do still bankroll Lao blowing himself up all the time. So a select group of elite Blades end up getting themselves and their skells carried up all the way up the the Celestial Ascent into the Roost by the Rothians, and that includes a lot of important characters. Team Elma, so Cross, Elma, Boris, and Danny. Team Arena, who consists of Arena, Gwyn, Marcus, and then they took Elle in as a 4th member, because why not have Elle? And then Lau's team, Team Belisarda. Possibly Doug's team, but I could see him still being in NLA for something we see later on. They have to fight very tactically, since again, the Ganglion have the air, and they can fly circles around the entire alliance. Even if the Rothians did send their people up into the air, they're still so outnumbered in terms of flyers that it wouldn't be a very good idea and they'd get destroyed. So they have to try to figure out how to draw out the Ganglion's fire from the ground, use cover smartly, and basically hit them as hard and fast as they possibly can whenever they make swooping passes over them, because that's the smart way to attack that way. They do surprisingly well and are starting to whittle the Ganglion forces down, but eventually a very bigger than all the, like, Komevas and even the Galders that are attacking them, issues itself out from the Zern and begins decimating everyone. And this is the first familiar Ganglion since Glennar. It's Goetia piloting her Almandal. She starts basically taking out party members left and right. Like, since you can show how powerful someone is while having them defeat named characters because they don't die in this version of the story. So I'd like to use that to good effects. Like, I guess her Almandal has been upgraded or something, or has extra energy from just coming out of the Zern or something, because I'm imagining it being a lot more threatening than it was originally. Like, yeah, she took out the Lifehold piece that first time, but this time she's just kind of going through everyone. She's taking out party members left and right. I could see them reenacting Marcus's death scene in a non-mortal way, since he's just a Mimiosome. Like, he tries to do something fancy to take her out, but she ends up destroying him. I'd imagine most of Team Arena gets beaten. Maybe one of Boris or Danny. if you don't have to worry about gameplay, I could say, yeah, definitely Boris or Danny, but if this was a playable chapter, then obviously the two of them would survive, so you have the 4 required people for the boss fight. And she tanks Lao, exploding for a good reason this time. But he detonates not only his Mim, but his entire Skell. Almandel just tanks it. Like, a good half of the named characters that show up there are back in NLA in their normal bodies, getting shaken up. I'd imagine the process of your Mim getting destroyed just causes you to be really disoriented for a little bit until you get used to being back in your natural body. Whereas intentionally deactivating it and like going through the normal shutdown procedures are a bit more normal. So that happens, and that's pretty bad. And Gajarg and Gabuid eventually do have to take her on in the air. And yeah, the Vassara and the Deva Kaladar are very powerful Skells. I'd imagine them being actually stronger than Goetia's Almandel, and they could easily win in a 2v1 fight. But the problem is, Goetia also has air support of hundreds of weaker Skells, and ends up getting into a position where she's about to land a killing blow on the two of them. And remember, a killing blow is actually a killing blow for those two, since they don't use Mims. If they die, they're actually dead. And that's kind of a bad thing. But all of a sudden, a familiar-looking Skell with a Heathorn weapon on its shoulder rams into Almandel from the side, knocking the attack off course, and followed by a huge fleet of other Skells, all Earth-made and all equipped with a completed flight module. Coming out of the cockpit of the lead two Skells, you hear the voice of two very familiar and very welcome faces, Doug Barrett and Lin Lee Koo. They finished not only designing, but fully testing and implementing the flight module just in the nick of time to save everyone. And, not only that, but they got a huge fleet of backup Skells, aka everything in NLA that they were able to get a flight module on before the operation went south and sent out, and in addition, a few of the party members who got taken out earlier in the battle, like probably Marcus, maybe Lao, since he'd probably blow himself off immediately once Almandel appeared and started wreaking havoc. They're also there too. Kind of, like, they're piloting a Skell, obviously. It's not their own Skell, because that would have probably gotten destroyed in the fight, but instead of using, like, new, fully designed Mims, they're just kind of using, like, generic blank-faced Mims that they just hopped into as quickly as possible, then got in a Skell and flew off. So, that's pretty cool. I love moments like these, so of course I wanted to put those in there. So, she's got a bunch of backup Skells. They autopiloted them over there, but then a bunch of Blades that have their Skell license and had them either destroyed or didn't bring a Skell with them, they hop in and they start taking the fight to the skies. It's pretty cool. I'm imagining this. It would take a lot more production value than any of the cutscenes in-game would actually have, but it would still be awesome. I kind of toyed with the idea of having Vandam just being a badass, riding in on, like, the shoulder of Lynn's Skell and, like, having a big Gatling gun, like that one awesome Vanguard moment from Xenoblade 1, but I decided to kind of ease off that, because I don't want to change characters' actual roles beyond how the changing story would affect them, and Vandam isn't a combatant in the base game, so as cool as that would be, I decided against doing that. But Boris and Danny get into backup Skell fight modules installed, while Elma and Cross both get into a very special Skell that Lynn had touched up just for them. The Tandem Ares from the prologue. Again, it's in good condition. Elma just didn't want to use it because of the lack of another pilot. Lynn kind of figured when she brought this one out that, yeah, this kind of calls for desperate measures, so I could see her being willing to use it. And from now on, I'm just going to call the Tandem Ares the Ares 6, just as a reference to the cancelled NASA Ares 5 rocket. I kind of headcanon that NASA was tapped for some of the Skell designs. Like, Elma brought the blueprints and schematics and probably an example of Skell tech, but I'd guess that NASA or private spaceflight contractors were the ones who actually built them. And I'm just saying that, yeah, someone at NASA thought it was a good idea to name the Ares Skell after discontinued, like, actual NASA rocket. Because clearly the name Ares didn't come from Elma's people. But I'm just going to refer to the Tandem Ares as the Ares 6 from now on every time I mention it in this What If. I'll refer to it as its actual unofficial title in other videos, because not everyone's going to watch these. But the Ares 6 is a very powerful scale. It was capable of going toe-to-toe with the full power Vita when piloted by Elma and the Black Knight. Elma's still at her cap skill, but Cross says this is their first fight in a scale, and not only are they going to have to get used to the flight module, I'm sure they did like ground simulations and stuff as part of the licensing process, but this is their first actual combat situation, and they have to learn how to fly it, and it's not a type of scale that they're used to. So yeah, the Ares 6 isn't at its full potential here, but it's still enough to take the fight to Almandal and do some pretty good things on it. Almandal goes down in flames. Goetia just dies unceremoniously. Her scale gets destroyed by the onslaught of all the new flying scales, all the Rothians that were left, all that stuff. And the group is about to make it to the Zern when the Telethia, who's been under fire from it the entire time, decides to retaliate finally, and takes it out basically just as easy as it did the 3 Tainted Sphinxes from Vanilla Chapter 6. Big deal. Unfortunately, because the Ares 6 is faster than all the other scales there, it made it closest to the Zern when this happens, and gets caught in the crossfire from the explosion from that. And while Cross and Elma do manage to make it out without their Mims getting destroyed, or even severely damaged, unfortunately, the scale itself is rendered unusable for the moment. I'd imagine that they do manage to get the frame out of there, but it's not in particularly good shape, and they probably don't have the resources to make another Ares 6, so this, instead of the Ares 6 being completely mangled and unusable after the crash, is what leads the Prague Ares program to be developed. But the Ganglion are basically permanently removed from everywhere south of Silvalum after this. The entire Noctilum force is completely destroyed. Primordia never got that much of a foothold anyway, and the Rothians are doing a pretty good job of keeping them out of Oblivia, so Silvalum is now, halfway through the story, basically the southernmost point where you're going to find any Ganglion. And of course the Prague Ares project is started, but not under command of Elma or Lyn. Elma figures that they do have enough of the Ares 6 to work off of where they could be able to make another Ares scale using Mirren materials just without her guidance and stuff. And yeah, Lyn becomes a combatant now from this point in the story. She'll be one of the main characters. And she gets added to Team Elma. Because of their heroism this time, and the fact that they were able to keep up with, though obviously not do as well as, Elma in the Ares 6 gets cross-promoted to being the leader of their own team. So Lyn decides to take Cross's spot in Team Elma. So Team Elma is now kind of a combination of OG game Team Elma and original Team Elma. So it's Elma, Lyn, Boris, and Danny. So it's like, what would have happened if Boris and Danny survived and Cross was never awakened in the base game? Excuse me, basically. But now Cross has their own team. And it's gonna be a while before I write another part for this, because I kind of skipped over. Like, we got them recovering the Vita early, we got them destroying Almandal early, so I'm gonna have to try to figure out, I might have to invent an entire chapter here and not, like, have it be the equivalent of an existing chapter to still make it 12 chapters, so that's gonna take a bit more writing even than this part did. So there's gonna be a bit of a gap there. And because of that gap, I'm going to let you, the viewers, decide a few things. I do have one person decided for being a member of Cross's new team, but I want the two of you, not the two of you, what am I saying? I want you to suggest to me in the comments of who the other 2 members of this new Team Cross could be. Now, there are a few characters that can't be part of that team. I'm gonna say no one on Team Elma, obviously, so no Elma, Lyn, Boris, or Danny. No one on Team Arena, this version of Team Arena, so no Arena, Gwyn, Marcus, and Elle. No one on Team Belisarda, so no Lau, basically. I think Doug has his own team, so no Doug either. Out of every other party member, the only ones I'm going to say no to are obviously Nagi, as well as Yelv, since I believe Yelv is actually the leader of his own team too. And in terms of characters who are quote-unquote party members in this what if that would be if this was playable, I'm going to say no Gabuid as well, because she's basically the commander of all the Rothians and Oblivion prone in Blades, so she kind of has her own thing and wouldn't make sense for her to be on a team. But any other party member in X is complete fair game, and I want to see how you come up with this. Obviously, Celica is out of the picture too, since she hasn't been found yet, but every other party member is in NLA at this point, and take your pick of the lot. If there are any other characters that are like combatants but not playable in game, like someone you wanted to see as a party member, NLA NPCs, obviously. Not Gajarg, since he's doing his own thing too, but think outside the box. Any NLA characters, anyone who's like actually combatant, of course. If they can pilot a Skell, put him in there. Tor is going to be the unofficial 5th member, the guide guy. And I do have one person that I have locked down, but go wild with your imaginations for who the other 2 are going to be. And until next time, this is Luxin, signing off.